There is a truth Pisces often senses very early on, even before you have the words to name it. It feels like being slightly out of sync, as if you walk into a room where everyone is speaking the same language, while inside you, a different melody is playing. You notice your gaze lingering on details others pass right by. You hear the silences people rush to fill with polite laughter. And for a long time now, even if no one ever says it out loud, you have known this quietly. You do not belong to the crowd. Not because you did something wrong, not because you are not good enough, but because you are too real in a world that has grown comfortable editing itself to fit. When people learn how to say the safe things, you speak what is honest. When they learn how to hide their emotions to avoid getting hurt, you feel so deeply that sometimes it even feels heavy to carry. You do not stop at the surface of things. You reach beneath it, into the space where unspoken fears and unnamed longings quietly live. And that, very quietly, makes many people uncomfortable, because not everyone is ready to be reflected back to themselves. Not everyone wants someone to brush against the shadows they have spent a lifetime protecting. Pisces never sets out to do this. You do not enter someone's life trying to expose or judge them. You simply show up fully, with an open intuition and a heart that never quite learned how to close all the way. Maybe that is why, from a young age, you grew used to standing just slightly off to the side, not pushed away, but rarely invited to the center. You felt both accepted and kept at a safe distance. People liked you just enough, as long as you did not speak too honestly, feel too deeply, or touch the questions that would make them pause and look at themselves. And when you continued being you, gentle, truthful, unchanged, that affection sometimes quietly turned into discomfort, then into distance. The most painful part was never being disliked. It was not understanding why. You wondered if you should be less sensitive, less deep, less yourself, just to make life easier. You tried, at least in your thoughts. But each time you did, something inside you pulled back ever so slightly, sad, as if it had been left behind. Pisces was never meant to live a shallow life. You carry the ability to experience the world in layers, all at once. You hear the sound of emotion, see the movement of energy, understand what has not yet been spoken. That does not make you weak, it makes you different. Yet, in a society that celebrates loud strength, that difference is often mistaken for fragility. If you are listening to these words and feel your heart soften, let yourself pause here for a moment. Breathe in slowly, as if you are breathing in the scent of the ocean at sunrise. Breathe out, as if you are releasing every question you have ever used to blame yourself. You do not need to become like anyone else to be worthy of love. This uncomfortable truth is not here to hurt you, but to free you from asking why you never quite fit everywhere. Some souls were never meant to dissolve into the crowd. They are here to remind the world that emotion, intuition, and sincerity still matter. And when you begin to accept this, when you stop reshaping yourself to be easier to love, something very subtle happens inside you. You realize that what you see in others, what you feel from them, has never been accidental. It is part of the gift you carry, even when that gift makes the journey lonelier. And from that moment, your own unique light starts to become clearer, strong enough to illuminate what you have always sensed, but never fully trusted yourself to believe. But from the moment that light begins to reveal itself, you start to notice something else. The world around you feels more transparent, not because everything has changed, but because the way you perceive it has grown deeper. People enter your life with easy smiles, calm voices, smooth, well-rehearsed stories. Yet somewhere behind their eyes, you sense a rhythm slightly off, a quiet emptiness, an unfilled space, a hidden worry they may not even recognize themselves, and you feel it, softly, like mist touching skin. Pisces does not observe people with suspicion. You feel them through presence. When someone sits across from you, your body understands before your mind does. You hear hesitation in the way they choose their words. You sense defense hidden inside statements that sound harmless. There are moments when you stay silent for a long time, not because you have nothing to say, but because you are touching something too real, too fragile, something that might shatter if spoken too quickly. And that is when the atmosphere shifts. People begin to feel uneasy around you, even though you have done nothing at all. They sense that you see through the familiar coat they wear every day. No one enjoys that feeling, not because you are wrong, but because truth, when someone is not ready to face it, creates a quiet pressure. Without meaning to, you become a mirror reflecting the parts they are trying to avoid. And the most natural human reaction is to turn away. You may have wondered why some connections begin warm, then slowly grow cold without explanation. Why certain people once came to you to be heard, but withdrew once you understood them too clearly. You never exposed them. You never confronted them. You simply stayed present, calm, deep, allowing truth to surface on its own. And sometimes that is far more unsettling than any spoken word. Pisces carries a rare sensitivity, like the ability to hear sound beneath water. While the world lives on the surface, you dive down, touching the undercurrents of emotion and intention. You understand that some fears do not need names. Some wounds do not need retelling. They only need to be acknowledged. But not everyone is ready for that. Not everyone wants to be seen so unguarded. And so, you learn a different kind of silence. Not silence born from fear, but from respect. You begin to understand that not every truth must be spoken immediately. Some truths are meant to be held gently, like a small lantern, bright enough to guide you, but not meant to shine directly into another's eyes. Pisces maturity is not about hiding intuition. It is about knowing when to open it and when to let it breathe quietly beside you. When you allow yourself to live this way, something unexpected happens. You stop blaming yourself for seeing too much. You stop questioning whether you are too sensitive. You begin to realize that deep perception is not a burden. It is a refined form of intelligence, quiet, unshowy, yet capable of leading you to understandings others may take a lifetime to reach. And in that stillness, when you stop explaining yourself to the world, a very gentle realization arrives. There will be people who enter your life without asking you to shrink, without asking you to look away, without asking you to empty yourself so they can feel safe. They will recognize your light, not as a threat, but as a place to rest. And then you understand this clearly. Seeing what others try to hide has never been your fault. It is simply proof that your heart was made to feel, to understand, and to wait for the souls brave enough to step into that light with you. And as you move through the world, carrying your own light, something familiar continues to unfold, softly but persistently. You do not raise your voice to win a conversation. You do not push forward to claim attention. You do not rush to prove that you are right. There is a natural calm in the way you show up, as if you understand that not everything needs an immediate response. You choose to listen before you speak. You make space for other people's emotions, even when it means waiting a little longer to be understood yourself. But the world around you moves to a different rhythm. Strength is often measured by volume, by force, by the willingness to collide. And when you refuse to play by those rules, you are quickly placed into boxes. Dreamy, too soft, unrealistic. You have likely heard these words more than once, sometimes spoken openly, sometimes delivered through a passing glance, filled with doubt, as if your gentleness were a flaw that needed correction. Yet there is something few people recognize: Pisces. Gentleness is not a lack of strength. It is strength that has passed through choice. You are fully capable of reacting, of being sharp, of hurting others if you wished, but you choose not to. You understand the cost of unconscious hardness. You know that careless words leave marks, even small ones. So you restrain yourself, not out of fear, but because you respect the weight of emotion. There are moments when you are mistaken for someone without boundaries, simply because you are generous. But the truth is, you sense boundaries more clearly than most. You know when to stay. You know when to step back. You know when silence heals and when silence protects. You simply do not announce these decisions. They happen quietly, like underground water moving beneath the earth, unseen, yet steady. Pisces survives through softness because you understand that the most rigid things are often the most fragile. You are like water. You do not confront stone directly, but over time, It is water that reshapes stone. Your gentleness does not seek immediate victory. It works silently. It slips into spaces where brute force cannot reach. And because of that, it is often underestimated. You may have wondered if becoming different would make life easier, speaking less, feeling less, caring less. But whenever you imagine that version of yourself, something inside you grows quiet, as if a vibrant part of you were being abandoned. You were not born to become dry. You were born to feel, to touch, to connect in a way that is entirely your own. And when you begin to honor that gentleness, a new kind of steadiness appears. You no longer need to be loud to be heard. You no longer need to be hard to be respected. Your presence carries its own rhythm, slower, deeper, one that those with true sensitivity can recognize. They feel safe beside you, not because you are weak, but because you do not need to hurt anyone to affirm your strength. In that quiet, you begin to see that the labels others place on you matter far less than they once did. What matters more is the unmistakable feeling inside that you are living in alignment with your true nature. And as you continue walking with that unpermissioned gentleness, you will notice invisible distances forming, not to isolate you, but to protect you from places where your softness would be misunderstood. Only those who move slowly enough, deeply enough, will be able to match your rhythm. And only those who stay long enough will see that beneath your gentleness lives a quiet inner strength, patiently waiting to be recognized. And then, when that gentleness no longer feels like something you have to explain or defend, you begin to notice another reason, quieter, deeper, for the distances that appear around you. You do not walk the familiar paths simply because they are well worn. You do not carry a hunger to prove anything to the world. There are roads others see as obvious, yet you pause there for a long time, not out of fear, but because you need to feel whether that path truly belongs to you. Pisces has never lived by the map of the majority. You live by inner sensation, by an invisible compass that trembles gently whenever you are about to drift away from yourself. While many people measure their worth by recognized achievements, by applause, by how far ahead they have gone, or how high they have climbed, you quietly ask different questions. Am I still myself on this journey? Am I trading something too precious just to be called successful? When night falls and the noise fades, am I truly at peace? These questions do not offer quick answers, but they keep you from losing yourself. And it is this difference that begins to stir unusual reactions from the world around you. Some look at you with confusion. Some experience you as a question mark, standing in the middle of a road they have walked for too long without daring to stop. You never tell them their path is wrong. You never announce that yours is right. You simply exist, fully, honestly, differently. And sometimes, that alone is enough to make others uneasy. Because when someone encounters a person who is not chasing what they themselves are chasing, a quiet question arises. If this person does not need the things I am fighting for, then what am I doing all of this for? It is not a comfortable question. It is not loud. But it is there, tapping softly on the places people prefer not to examine. And instead of sitting with that question, many choose to turn away. They call your difference strange, vague, unrealistic. They apply labels, so they do not have to look any longer. Pisces was never meant to live an easily understood life. You carry a rhythm of your own, slower, deeper, rarely aligned with the collective pace. You do not believe that everyone must want the same thing, the same destination. You sense that each soul travels a different path, and that comparison only blurs the true meaning of the journey. But not everyone is ready to hear that. For some, your difference quietly threatens the stability of their own choices. And so discomfort appears, not because you have hurt them, but because you remind them that they have options, that other ways of living exist alongside their own. When people are not ready to acknowledge that, they often push you away. They call it dislike, incompatibility, different frequency. Yet beneath those labels is something deeply human. You force them, even briefly, to face themselves. If you have ever felt misunderstood simply for not being like anyone else, allow that feeling to stay for a moment. Not to deepen the pain, but to bring clarity. You were not born to become the most acceptable version of yourself. You were born to live in alignment with your own heartbeat, even when that rhythm does not blend with the crowd. There is a quiet form of courage that requires no declaration, no proof. It is the courage to live an unscripted life. And as you continue walking this way, unhurried, without asking permission, something very subtle begins to happen. The doubtful glances slowly fall away. The noise no longer clings to you as tightly, not because you changed, but because you stopped reacting. You understand that rejection does not always speak about you. Sometimes it only speaks about the questions others have not yet dared to answer for themselves. And in that quieter space, you begin to feel a genuine lightness, as if you are no longer carrying expectations that were never yours to hold. What remains is a simple, steady knowing that even if few walk beside you on this road, it is still a path you can continue on without heaviness in your heart. And as the noise slowly fades, as the eyes around you stop trying to define or judge you, you begin to notice something very clear. The space around you becomes more open, but it is not empty. Instead, it grows quiet in a way that feels easy to breathe in. You are no longer surrounded by half-formed connections, by conversations you had to hold up with effort, by closeness that existed only on the surface. Everything slows down, and in that slowing, you begin to see who truly stays. Pisces has never been someone with many people close at once. Even in the middle of a crowd, you often feel connected to only a few eyes, a few voices, a few souls. You are not searching for constant company. You are searching for the feeling of being seen, not seen for what you present to the world, but for what lives quietly inside, the part you rarely bring forward because it is too tender, too real. The ones who stay with you rarely arrive quickly. They come slowly, sometimes very slowly. At first, they may not fully understand you, but they do not rush to conclusions. They are patient enough to sit beside you in silence, gentle enough not to push you to speak before you are ready. They see you on your brightest days and on the days when you are tired and withdrawn, and they remain, not out of obligation, not for appearances, but because of a connection that is difficult to name. You do not need many promises. You need the feeling of safety in being yourself. For Pisces, connection is not something to fill a void. It is a place to set down your defenses. When you open your heart, you open it deeply. You do not love lightly. You do not connect casually. Every relationship that enters your life touches something real. And because of that, when it hurts deeply. There are moments when you wonder if you place too much meaning on people, if loving so honestly is what makes you vulnerable to pain. But then you realize something important. If you had to choose between a life filled with many shallow connections and a life with only a few but real ones, you would choose the way you are living now. Because being surrounded by people who never truly reach you is far lonelier than having only a few with whom you can be fully yourself. Pisces does not need someone to always be present. You need someone who understands that your absence carries meaning too. There are times when you step back, not because you no longer care, but because you need to return inward to restore emotional balance. And those who truly belong to you do not leave during these quiet spaces. They do not rush to fill silence with suspicion. They trust the invisible thread of connection without needing to hold it tightly. Because you love this way, you are more easily hurt. Each time you lose a real connection, it feels like losing a part of yourself, but you also learn that this pain is not meaningless. It is proof that you have lived and loved with your whole being, without holding back, without calculation. And in a world that grows more comfortable with fast, light, easily replaced relationships, your ability to hold depth is something rare. When you look back on your journey, you see that even though few have stayed, each one has left a clear mark. They did not come to fill empty space. They came to walk beside you for a portion of the road, and you begin to understand this. You are not lacking. You are discerning. Your heart has not closed. It has simply stopped opening to everyone. In that quiet, a gentle warmth begins to spread. Slowly, but steadily. You no longer need to be loved by many to feel worthy. Just a few real connections are enough to remind you that you are not lost, that somewhere in this wide world, there are souls who recognize you from the very first silence and choose to stay, not because you are perfect, but because you are you. And then, a very quiet moment happens inside you. No noise, no dramatic event to mark it. Just a morning when you wake up, or a late night sitting alone, and suddenly you realize how tired you are of trying to be pleasant in everyone's eyes. Tired of guessing what to say so no one feels uncomfortable. Tired of shrinking your emotions so others can feel at ease. That moment carries no anger, only a soft, unmistakable clarity. You understand that if you keep living this way, you will slowly disappear from your own life. Pisces does not learn this lesson in a single day. It comes from giving your whole heart and still being misunderstood. From relationships where you yielded so much, there was no space left for you. From staying silent to keep the peace, then returning home with a hollow feeling inside. All of these experiences, even the painful ones, teach you something essential. Being loved means very little if the price is losing yourself. So you begin to change, not by becoming hard or distant, but by becoming more honest with your own emotions. You begin to say no when needed, even if your voice remains gentle. You allow yourself to step away from places that drain you, even if you once stayed out of fear of being misunderstood. You stop over-explaining choices that come from intuition. Not because you do not care, but because you understand that those who truly need to know will feel it without words. Pisces boundaries are not tall walls. They are more like a shoreline, soft, yet clearly defined. You know how much you can give, and when it is time to stop. You begin to choose energy, not by right or wrong, but by inner resonance, who leaves you feeling lighter, where you can exhale without needing armor. These choices do not make you selfish. They make your life sustainable. When you stop trying to please the world, something unexpected happens. Some people leave. Some feel disappointed. Some say you have changed. But this time, the change does not unsettle you. Because now, you know where you stand. You no longer seek approval like a lifeline. You stand on your own perception, even if it still wobbles at times. It is an honest wobble. If dislike still appears from the outside, it no longer cuts as deeply. It is no longer proof that something is wrong with you. It becomes confirmation that you have stopped trying to fit, that you no longer dim your light so others are not blinded, that you chose truth over comfort. For Pisces, this is a profound step into maturity. You begin to understand that your value is not measured by how many people love you, but by how honest you are with yourself. You do not need to be understood by everyone. You only need to stop betraying your own feelings. When you live this way, a different kind of peace arrives. Not a loud happiness, but the relief of no longer running from yourself. In that peace, you look back on the past with softer eyes. You do not blame yourself for trying too hard. You know you did it because your heart was wide and wanted to love. And now, that heart has not grown smaller. It has simply learned how to love with discernment, how to love without self-abandonment. And as you continue walking with this new steadiness, you feel lighter. Not because life offers fewer challenges, but because you are no longer carrying expectations that were never yours. You move more slowly. You breathe more deeply. And in each step, there is a quiet presence. As if, at last, you have allowed yourself to live in your own rhythm and let the world decide how far it wishes to walk beside you. And now, as you look back on everything you have lived through, a different feeling begins to rise. It is no longer the question of why you were not loved more, no longer the doubt of whether something was missing in you. What remains is a quiet, deep understanding that none of those experiences came to make you smaller. They came to remove what never belonged to you, so what is essential could finally be seen clearly. The truths that once felt uncomfortable, that once weighed heavily on your heart, begin to reveal themselves as carefully wrapped gifts. You realize that being loved by fewer people was never a sign of failure. It was a sign that your soul was never meant for the crowd, never meant to please every set of eyes. Some lights are not designed to shine everywhere. They are meant to warm those who know how to stop and stay long enough. Pisces does not need to move fast to prove the path is right. You learn how to stay with yourself on bright days and on dark ones. You no longer rush to fill silence with someone else's presence. You understand now that being alone is not the same as being lonely. It can be a rare form of fullness, where you hear your own heartbeat more clearly than any noise outside. When you remain with yourself, your pace begins to slow. You choose conversations that do not require many words. You cherish the kind of understanding that needs no explanation. You see that true connection does not have to be many. It only needs to be deep enough to remain steady when life changes direction. Those who enter your life now do not come out of curiosity or because you tried to be likable. They come because they recognize something familiar in your quiet presence. The light you carry is not loud. It does not overwhelm. It is like a small lamp placed in the corner of a room, bright enough for someone tired to realize they can sit down, exhale, and be themselves without armor. Those who need that light will find you, not because you called for them, but because they felt the genuine safety you carry. And you are no longer afraid of losing those who cannot stay. You understand now that every departure creates the space for truer connections to arrive. You do not close your heart after being hurt. You simply open it differently, more slowly, more consciously, still soft. Your heart has not hardened. It has matured. The world may still misunderstand you at times. There may still be glances that pass without stopping, but none of that shakes your sense of worth anymore, because you know who you are without an audience. You know what it feels like to be present inside your own life, without permission, without explanation, without becoming someone else. And if there is one final truth to keep, it is this. You were not born to be loved by everyone. You were born to live truthfully. When you choose that, your light will find its way. It will reach the souls sensitive enough to feel, brave enough to stay, and gentle enough to never ask you to make yourself smaller. In that meeting, no grand promises are needed, only presence. And sometimes, that is enough for an entire lifetime.